Thank you very much. That's a fascinating story about our past and the often untold past. You have been very modest, not talking about your family sacrifice in this talk. And if audience would like to know that, no worry. We got 2 additional speakers. They will touch that side of the story. And we would like to start question and answer first, if that's okay with you.
Yes. First, allow me to thank you, Dr. Garrison. If I address you wrong, it's I'm in America, so we address all physician surgeons, doctor. So we don't quite know what Mr. or Professor use, but I call you Dr.
That's story.
That's privilege.
That was a very excellent, fine talk, and remind us how the Tongji Medical School Union Hospital has grown from little acorns. Thank you so much. The first question, I think, raised from Dr. Henry Liu. I don't know if you can answer, but do your best. It's Methodist Hospital is now which hospital in Wuhan? Methodist Hospital.
Yes, it was a parallel hospital. There was a lot of interchange between staff of the 2 hospitals. And those who were Methodist who joined the Union Hospital were the ones who tended to stay until the war began. Dr. Ralph Bolton was a very fine ophthalmologist and anesthetist, and he was the father of one of my oldest friends that I've ever can remember. So they were parallel hospitals. They often interchanged nursing and medical staff, and it was a very friendly rivalry during the time that I can remember. Does that answer your question?
Mr. Gallison, so nice to have you give us a talk, and we learned so many untold stories. I just feel so honored to work in the same hospital. I was a surgeon at Union Hospital in the 80s. I was wondering that Methodist Hospital is the second hospital in Wuhan or the central hospital Wuhan today? That's okay. You probably are.
I don't know about now, but there were 5 or 6 other hospitals besides the Union and the Methodist before the war. What happened afterwards, I think you would know better than me, because there is a Tongji Medical Center which is separate from the Union one, isn't there?
Is this Wuhan Union Hospital earlier than Beijing Union Hospital or after?
Almost about the same time. What they used to call the Peking Union Hospital, that's right. I think probably the Beijing one was a bit before. It was, I know, because the Emperor Cixi had a strangulated hernia, and one of my father's contemporaries from school went to Beijing, and he operated on the Empress, who changed her mind and decided not to support the Boxer rebellion. So I think Beijing got there first.
So the name per se is not related to Beijing Union Hospital?
I don't think so. The administration was quite separate.
Thank you so much.
Beijing, I think, was mostly American foreign staff, and then gradually they became more and more Chinese. That was more American.
Just before I move to the next person to ask question, Professor Xiaobo Wu, and may I just introduce the author's actually sister, elder sister. So we got the eldest person right now, Francis here. So I have to unmute her speaker, so she might got a good memory as well, can answer some of your questions. So Xiaobo, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a fantastic talk and clear many unanswered questions from me. So my question is, during the time, Rockefeller Foundation gave a huge amount of money to China. to found of the Peking Union Hospital, as
Yes,
you know,
correct.
and also introduce Western medicine to China. That's a great credit. I don't know if you guys, have any kind of connections in terms of get any money from America.
No, a friend may correct me. I don't remember money coming from the Peking direction at all, because they had their problems, financial problems too. But most of the money came from humble Chinese people, humble English people, because this is how, and what really happened was that every 5 or 6 years, missionaries like our father would go back to the UK, and they would preach in the church services all around the country for a year, officially and correctly giving news of how the work was going in China, but also it was to, more or less to say, we need money to pay the nursing staff, we need money to build a new hospital. So it was very much a question of fundraising, and I'm sure the Americans did the same for Beijing as well. Because
during the time, Rockefeller Foundation gave a huge amount of money. Yes. It's the one overseas investment for the medical education. That's a huge amount. The second one is come from American source, Yale University. Xiangya Medical University in Changsha is also American one. But I was very interested. So during the time when I read the early Chinese medical history, the regular Chinese people have a very harsh attitude to Western medicine.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Your experience, or your parents or your grandparents' experience about the regular Chinese. When I read the history book, even a Western physician like you see the patient, they need to have a policeman on site to make you guys secure, so that kind of.
Yes, it was very much the need for a charm offensive, you could say, but of course no Chinese patient was forced to come in to either the Beijing Medical Center or to Wuhan. It got its reputation from word of mouth, and on the whole, it was very much a choice. If you have a broken leg, do you accept that you will have a bent leg for the rest of your life, or you will have a pin and plate put in, or have it put in plaster? It was a question of, I think, of benign propaganda, not harsh, not Donald Trump propaganda, benign propaganda, and by word of mouth. There was never shortage of patients. There were always patients queuing up at that gate which you saw, wanting to come in for treatment because of the work. But the work was done mostly by Chinese medical officers.
Of Tongji Medical School, I feel great gratitude to Western missionary to introduce basically a new concept of medicine to China. Tremendously different compared with the traditional Chinese medicine and the modern Chinese medicine. We have the same term, like a heart, kidney, liver, but actually the concept is completely different. So we greatly appreciate you guys from your families and from UK as a country, and also thank you so much.
I wanted to state to you what I said to Dr. Deng the other day. Believe me, my grandfather and my father and mother, they loved working in China. That was where they felt they wanted to be. So they were not feeling that they were noble or proper. It's where they wanted to be, and it was a privilege to go there. And of course, they made lots of friends. But then there was one at a time when one of the nationalists, that's Chiang Kai-shek's officers' girlfriends, had a perforated appendix. and she came in, and although my father operated as quickly as possible, she died, and she was buried in the hospital graveyard. And the nationalist colonel came over and demanded to see my father, and he pointed a gun at my father. But one of the hospital gardeners who was looking after those beautiful chrysanthemums every autumn, he saw how sad my mother was, so he ran over to the cemetery, and he stood all the time between the officer and my father while my father explained why appendicitis was a dangerous disease and why his girlfriend had died. And eventually the major got fed up with it and went away. So I owe to that very nice gardener from the front drive for protecting my father on that particular occasion. So I assure you, if he or my grandfather were asked to go back to China again in exactly the same way, they would go straight away.
Lucy, any question?
Thank you. I really appreciate Dr. Gillison. It's such a great lecture. To me, we always wanted to know where do we come from, and that's including where I was born, and also that's including where I was educated. I don't have that much question for you, but I would like to share with you the missionary act that's done by your grandfather's generation has passed along. I currently practice in the United States, and I went to Kenya for a mission trip, and I observed everything. I participated everything you just shared with us. That means a lot to me. I think, just like you said, the great acorns grow in a tall tree, and I've seen that tree replicate. I just want to let you know that tree has been replicated in other places.
Good.
Yeah, and it's so nice to hear about those untold story, and that's part of our life. It's gonna, encourage us to share with others and keep on going. Thank you. And another thing I would like to tell you is Chinese culture respects seniors. So when we say you're 80-something years old, that's actually a compliment rather than, you look like 20 years old, but I just wanted to get that.
I will pass the message on to my grandsons because they don't have the same approach as you have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are Jim.
Yeah, maybe see anyone else has a question. Charles, have you picked up any?
So on the Wu Xiaobo, another question. Xiaobo, are you online?
Okay.
Or I can ask for you.
Yeah, Xiaobo, you can carry on, and probably Deng Song would like to say something as well.
Yes, it's nice to meet you, everyone. It's nice to see Wolfert, and I actually knows Wolfert and his family a long time because my teacher, Ye Huayin Jiao used to work with his father together. And so after the China reopened, they actually communicated each other first, and it was Professor Ye actually visited them after the Cultural Revolution, very early stage. So I actually visited Wolf and his family maybe at least 4 times. I stayed there overnight, and he told me a lot of story, and there's always new stories. So I learned a lot, and then more things today again. Thank you, Wolfer. And with this Zoom, I hope I can meet with you on the Zoom all the time.
Okay.
Anytime. Yes, it's great. Great to see you. Say hello to Sue as well.
I will indeed.
Yes.
All I can say, it is a great honor to talk to so many people from where I was born. I am very sorry for the people from China who've had to get up so early in the morning.
Something? Fran, would you like to say something? Yeah.
Oh, well, I can only talk. I was only in China for the first 6 years of my life. And my memory of Wuhan is of the period when the wounded soldiers were pouring down the drive in 1938, at that time of the awful fighting. And so my memory is of the hospital seeming to take everybody who came without fail. After that, we came back to England, and Walford and my parents went back to China in 1939, leaving my sister and me here in boarding school. So I haven't got the connections with the hospital that Walford has, because he was there for the first 11 years of his life, where I was only 6. But the memories of Wuhan, of the Union Hospital, are very, very clear to me. And I've found the letters, the family letters, and a lot of letters about the early days, which are quite fascinating. But it's a privilege to have been allowed to look in on this. And I think my brother's done very well. Good for you, Walford. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we have to move on. And probably a second session or section in Chinese, and talk about the great efforts they personally made, the family personally made, to develop medical systems down there, particularly in China. And all this history had been digged up by Deng Songyang and Zi Daoxia and Xu Di. Francis and Wilford or Andrew, if you like to stay, you can stay. But if you like to leave, feel free to leave. And it's quite a long time for you.
Thank you so much. I wish I could speak Chinese like Wilford.